Together today, the 6th of April. My name is Anna. I'm PR and Communications Manager at getAbstract, and I'm joined today by our co-founder and Chief Operating Officer, Patrick Brigger, and our staff writer and experienced remote worker, Sara Küpfer. So just a reminder that we're doing these get-togethers daily. You can find all the details on our journal, and we're excited to be talking about remote working as our topic today. So please feel free to leave any questions, comments. We'll get to those in the course of today's session, if time allows. So without further ado, welcome Pat, welcome Sara. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're talking about our newest white paper, which deals with many aspects of remote working. And I'd like to address my first question to you, Pat. So getAbstract was really an early adopter of remote working. Why was that? How did that come about?
Well, when we started getAbstract, we were 3 friends, and one of us was living in Lucerne, the other guy in New York, and the third guy in Miami. So it was kind of in our DNA that we had to start collaborating with being in different places. But I think to answer the question, you have to understand a little bit about our business model and our vision also. We believe that you can take better decisions if you base them on relevant content. It's important for individuals, but also for companies. And unfortunately, how do you find that relevant knowledge? And unfortunately, machines just don't cut it yet. So a machine has very much difficulty finding the right context, to find what's important, and then to compress it so it's a pleasure to read and easy to absorb. Machines just have a problem. So that's why we are working with humans, with people. People find that relevant knowledge. They search thousands of sources, and they have the brain power to do this. And a lot of these people, many of them are journalists, and they live all over the world. So in order to fulfill our promise and try to do what we like to do, find that best knowledge, we need to work with a lot of people, hundreds of people who are not in the same place. And that's really how we started the company. From the beginning, we're really relied on communicating across distances with lots of different people.
So, I mean, getAbstract was founded in 1999. The internet was really in its infancy, and you must have been dealing with a lot of challenges when you were trying to communicate and work across geographic time distances with people all around the world. What were some of the biggest challenges that you had to navigate? Were they technical? Were they to do with skills? What were some of the challenges that you had to solve?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, the internet was in its infancy and technology was much different than it is today. And at the beginning, when you start, obviously you have to get those communication tools set up and running. So today, technology is much easier, as we can see with this video chat. You know, it's free. You have online tools. You have Teams. You have Skype. You have WhatsApp. You have Siri stuff. So that goes much easier. But nevertheless, you have to get that in place, because most of the things that you do, if you don't have that in place, it's not going to work. But then obviously the second challenge is for the people, and I guess Sara will talk a little bit more about this, how do you organize yourself when you're at home? So that's a personal thing you have to do to not procrastinate, to have a schedule, a routine, not mix, or see how you can have a personal life and a professional life. And I think from a company standpoint, there's another challenge though, and that challenge has to do with the mindset that you generate within your company. So it's first of all, you have to enable or generate an environment of trust. So you have to trust employees, and employees have to trust the company. And it's not enough to say, of course, go home, work at home, we trust you, but then you make a phone call every 5 minutes to see if people respond, or you see how quickly they answer emails. Then that's not going to work out. So you have to create also an environment where people are not afraid to make mistakes, where they are open to contribute, to innovate, to have new ideas, and maybe fail at some point. But if they do, it's just another step towards the right solution. And you were also asking how to solve this. So I think you have to stay in close contact. You have to communicate a lot, and also orally, because verbal communication, I think, is very difficult in these times as well. You have to allow, as I said before, freedom of speech and thought. Maybe their mistakes are going to happen. And reward the people, thank them for what they do, because it's totally not obvious how everybody's coping with this, especially in these times of the Corona crisis as well. So I think you also have to show as an employer lots of gratitude towards employee that they do what they do.
That was a great introduction also to my next question, which I would like to ask Sara. Sara, you have a lot of experience working from home. You actually wrote the white paper that we're talking about today. What are your experiences? How did you develop the skills that you needed to develop to work successfully from home?
I think they would probably have started as a student. When you're a student, especially in grad school, you have a lot of time and very little structure. So if you want to finish your thesis within a year, you really have to start organizing yourself. And I really like that book and the Now Habit that getAbstract has summarized. That really prompts you to look at your day basically to look at all the 24 hours you have in your day, and you put in the time you need to sleep, to eat, to exercise, and then you see what time is left for your priorities. And that really creates a motivation for you to not waste the little time you have left in your schedule to focus. So yeah, I've done quite well doing this, and I don't know. Some people take to it more easily, and others need more outside structure. But it works for me. I think it's really important to basically I really pretend as if I always start work at the same time of the day, and have basically a work schedule, right? Like that. This is really not different from the office. It's just, I can just work much more productively this way. You have fewer distractions, and you can really kind of like adjust to your own biorhythm too, when you work best to do what.
You actually wrote an article called "It Shouldn't Take a Virus to Let People Work from Home," which was on our journal and got picked up by some other media channels as well. So it clearly really struck a note in terms of topic and timing as well. What made you write that article?
Yeah, I actually had to check back on my email. That was back then when the world was still in order. It was like, I think early February. The media started to pick up the topic, of course, because of course it started in China, and China started what was called the biggest experiment in remote work ever, right? And so just there was a lot of buzz around that topic, and then I got assigned a really interesting article about remote work to summarize. And then after I summarized that, I thought like, well, it would be really interesting. We just had finished our company kickoff, and I got to know so many people at getAbstract who also work on their own, and who really work remotely full time, and to learn a little bit about their work habits and how they do it and how they make sure they don't get lonely. And I thought it was really interesting. So I thought we could combine these two things, because we bring a lot. I could do a white paper on the topic, but combine it with a lot of company internal expertise. So I started that as a little side project. It was not what I was supposed to write on at the time, but I just told Patricia, look, that's my little side project. So I started to collect some best practices from our worldwide staff. And suddenly, the lockdown happened here, and I had the material ready to produce the white paper. So that worked well.
Sarah just mentioned the before days when the world was still in order. Pat, I'm really interested. What changes do you think will happen? What do you anticipate as a result of this current situation? Do you think home office will become the new normal?
You know, it reflects very much a lot of our way that we are living. You know, when I was a little boy, I remember my parents, they watched the news every day at 7:30 p.m. because that's when the news was on TV. And that was just a sacred time. You had to be quiet so they could watch the news. Today, you watch the news whenever you would like to watch the news. Likewise, let's say you get up, or you get up early in the morning, you have an idea, and you start working on that idea. Maybe you eat breakfast afterwards because you can, or you don't feel like working. Like before this webinar, I was a little mentally tired, and I was able to do a half an hour yoga session in the middle of the day. You can't do that kind of stuff when you're in the office. I mean, would look probably a little bit silly if in the big space office you start to do your yoga exercise. So I think the new normal also now after this crisis will be different than the old normal. And so I'm really convinced of that. And companies who were well prepared for this crisis and where it's going well, they will be reinforced to continue doing what they're doing and maybe even build it out. For companies where it did not go well because they were not well prepared, if they are good managers, they will learn from this and they will say, what do we have to change to make this look bigger? And I think the key, as to many things in life, is to have a certain balance. So it's not going to be, you know, always everybody work from home all the time, but I think the difference will be maybe more often from home. And when you're in the office, that will be a good time to have people come together and exchange ideas and take advantage of the fact that you can see people, that you can see the mimics, that you can brainstorm much better maybe than if you can do online. So it's not, you come to the office, you sit in your on desk, you do your thing and you go back home. Because that you can do at home. And with all the communication tools that we have, with video conferencing, you can do it very well even. But so when you come to the office, we have to think about now, what should we change so that we can take advantage of being there physically together? So it can be simple stuff already, like eating lunch together. And that's or having the coffee together. So that's where you can exchange ideas and maybe come up with results that you haven't planned. So I think at home, you're probably more structured. And at the office, maybe that gives possibilities to go for unstructured innovation and new things that you want to try out.
I think that's actually a really, really great point. And Sarah, you just touched on it as well. Teamwork, obviously it takes on a completely different nature when you're not physically in the same office. Sarah, in your many years of experience, how have you managed working as part of a team that, you know, is all around the world?
Well, I've kind of had I had the advantage of always having been a hybrid. Like I always had a day in the office, also at my previous job, and that was for me the perfect balance. And it's actually interesting that Gallup did a study on it, and they actually also identified the sweet spot for remote worker to be 70 to 80% at home and 20 to 30% office based. And I can totally attest to that. Like I know this, especially at my previous job, I always found at home I get so much more done. I'm so much more productive. But this one day in the office was so important as well. Just exactly as Patrick said, for the unstructured kind of coffee conversations or questions that actually often led to an improvement of the product and so forth. So I think it would be hard. I've never been a 100% remote worker, and for that, I think it's really important to do video calls and so on, and especially the brainstorming. I mean, just yesterday on Friday, we could have agreed on a new topic for a sketch note together over email, but then I decided to call the person, and together we came up with a new idea, right? This is how it works, I think. You should really do that. You should always, if you're in doubt, just pick up the phone. because you
I
don't
think
want
we
to
said
miss
that in
out.
the white paper. Yeah.
Mhm.
You don't want to miss
We
out
said
on
that
the
in
opportunity to.
I think we had a bit of lag there. We did mention in the white paper that one of the words of wisdom is it's better to have one conversation too many than one conversation too few. And I think that is one of the key takeaways from the white paper. But Pat, from a leadership perspective, I'd be really interested to know, why do you think there has been, maybe up until now, some reluctance from some companies to offer flexible or remote working models?
I think sometimes it has to do with the processes and structures you have in place. And it's been working for so many years. Why do you want to change it? So, and that's very often maybe a rather short, at best midterm type of thinking, but definitely not the long-term type of thinking. And unfortunately, I think it's very often in life so. If you don't get hit on the head, it's very hard to change. And so, yeah, as I said, because it's been going on, you don't change. It's like the boiling frog problem. You don't until you realize that the water is too hot and you're not going to make it. It's too late. And so I think these companies. So the coronavirus, if we can see anything positive in it, it's this wake-up call, hopefully, for some companies to see, hey, we have to change something. We have to, I come back to what I said at the beginning, we have to establish that mindset in the company that this is possible, that we can have that trust relationship between people, and adjust our processes accordingly.
Yeah,
Sara,
and I think if I may add.
Please do.
Oh, if I may add, I mean, it's really a perk or an employee benefit that costs a company nothing. It even saves them a lot of money. They save on office space and they get greater productivity in return. So there's really a lot of upsides and very little downside if you do it right.
Yeah.
And the employees like it. You're able to attract talent, especially millennials, Generation Z. They no longer want to be working in a 9-to-5 job. They do understand the importance of work-life balance or the importance of recharging your batteries and to work and to have the trust of their employer that they can do it, that they don't need to be supervised all the time.
Yeah, I think Sarah, very good point. It makes an employer much more attractive if you can offer this type of working environment. And it's easier to attract, like you say, the young talent and motivated, good talent for your company.
What other benefits are there? I'm thinking about, for example, ditching the morning commute. I mean, that's been a huge benefit just in terms of gaining many hours in a week. And obviously that will have other knock-on effects for the environment, for example, as well. What do you think about these kind of additional benefits?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Especially the commuting time. When I lived in the States, I realized a lot of people cannot afford to live in the center of cities, so they move out further and further away. And when you look at properties during the weekend, you have a half an hour drive, but then when you have to do that drive during rush hour, it turns into 1.5 hour drive, and that's one way. So that's definitely a huge, huge benefit to people. And I think the other benefit is really it gives you more degrees of freedom as an employee, because you're not fixed in exactly what you do. And this also gives additional benefits to the company. I mean, it's important to set expectations right, especially also for an employer. You cannot expect that in most cases that people are there around the clock and answer your emails at 10 at night. I don't think you should expect that. Unless you're a dispatcher, whatever, that's your job profile. But still, employees automatically take that liberty and stretch the day and are more flexible. And I think that's very positive for both sides.
We heard the word balance quite a few times throughout the course of this conversation. Sara, from your experience as well, one of the concerns that we've heard a few times, also from employers, is the risk of overloading employees with exactly this expectation of permanent availability, or kind of blurring the lines between work hours and your private life. How do you manage separating work and home? How do you find balance, or how do you enforce that separation?
Yeah, as I said before, I really set my working hours. And I have a dedicated desk that I use basically only for work. So I kind of clock in and out. And for example, I make a point of not having Teams on my phone. So when my computer is physically turned off, Teams is not on, so I cannot be reached during off work hours. And yeah, sometimes you really have to, tell yourself, like, especially when you're writing on something and it's Friday and it's going really well, and you're kind of tempted to put some extra hours in on the weekend just to get it done. And sometimes you really have to say, you gotta not do this now, because you need those batteries, right? Next week. So it's also a form of self-discipline. But then also I believe in the separating your private life from your work life. Like what has worked really well for me is I use a browser, a blocker, that blocks me from certain websites that I'm sometimes tempted to check. Like during work hours, I block myself from using Facebook and my favorite news websites. And that really helps. It's really interesting. I started that years ago, and within a couple of days, you don't even the thought of checking those sites doesn't even come up anymore, because you can't use it. And I find these really effective ways of kind of separating the two. Because I really believe in working in very concentrated bursts, because that's, I think, when at least I am really the most productive. And so I do believe in a strong separation. And I mean, especially in China, that seemed to have been the #1 complaint of employees, that they've suddenly felt they needed to be available on a 24/7 basis. So for me, I think it's really important to not have Teams on your phone. I think that's one thing. So when you're away, and people can send you an email, and you can respond.
And you can read it in the
morning. Email. Exactly.
And Pat, I'd like to move on to some questions that we received from the audience. And actually, this same question has come up a couple of times. Also, from a leadership perspective, how do you turn off your work brain when you're at home, but you're done for the evening? From a leadership perspective, maybe you are having to consider people in other time zones, for example. What's your personal method for switching off, apart from yoga?
I mean, I think Sara is doing a much better job than I'm doing. I have difficulties. My #1 recipe, the pill that I like to take is, and maybe it contradicts some of the other things, but the work-life balance, I don't really like that term so much, because if you don't like work is part of your life. So it's not work and life. You have to enjoy what you're doing, take energy from what you're doing. So work is also part of your life. I'd rather say it's work health or life health balance. So personally, I really enjoy that I can do yoga in the middle of the day, and I don't mind then if I have to work later at night, because yes, there are people who are 6 hours or even 12 hours behind my time or in front of my time. And it depends a little bit also what type of work you have to do. But like Sara said, I mean, I do have Teams, but on my phone, if there's a time where I say I really don't want to get disturbed, then I don't feel bad just not answering it or turning it off. I think that self-respect to myself, I'm willing to give. When at some points also I say, look, I'm okay, and I can take a call, and it's later at night, and it doesn't bother me.
This is another question that we got via Facebook. And Pat, I would like your opinion on this one as well. Do you think that home office could be beneficial in that it puts more emphasis on results, what people actually get done, rather than on micromanaging the processes that they follow? So, for example, also the working hours, that those suddenly open up and results are expected, but presence maybe isn't.
Absolutely. I think it puts a lot more benefits on the results that you want to obtain. And people, interesting enough, people like to work. If you identify with your work, you're not going to just work 5 hours and then you go, but you're probably still going to work your 8 hours. So what I see, what happens very often is people just produce more because they're faster and more efficient, they're going to do more and they're going to enjoy this. So I think, and that's where the trust comes in. And yes, I think that's a good comment that the user has made. You do probably do a less micromanaging and give more freedom to each employee.
And we're slowly but surely starting to run out of time. So I would like to just one more question from the audience. And this is actually an anecdotal question from someone in our sales team, in our CSM team, who heard that remote work, one of the benefits is that virtual meetings tend to be more efficient than face-to-face meetings. What are your experiences with this? Both Pat and Sarah, I would be really interested in your experiences.
Should I go first very quickly? I think it depends. I think very often that's true because you're a little bit faster and you get to the point quicker. But I think what's important is in any meeting, you have to have a very clear agenda. I mean, if you go into a meeting and you don't know why you're there and what you want to achieve, it's not going to be a good meeting, regardless whether it's virtual or face-to-face. So I think that doesn't change, whether it's virtual or not. That has to be clear. I think that's important, regardless of how you do it.
And Sarah, what are your experiences with virtual meetings?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think this is also a point you drive home in the white paper, that the management principles, they don't change. You don't have to reinvent the wheel as a leader. It's more about the tools you use sometimes that are different. And I think what I can really emphasize as a remote worker, I think it's based, the whole concept is based on a bit of a more positive view of human nature, that I really also don't believe humans are by nature lazy. And I think the clearer defined your goals are and the better your motivation is, the harder you're going to work, no matter whether you work in an office or remotely.
So we've got like 2 minutes left. And just to end on a positive, productive note, do you have one summary that you would like to recommend as kind of further reading on the topic of remote work? Maybe something overcoming procrastination, that would be useful for me, or staying motivated. Is there something that you would like to recommend that's been useful to you?
Sarah?
Okay. I'll stick to the now habit. This is an old book, but I think it's still one of the most popular summaries at getAbstract. And I think the message is really powerful that basically you really treat the activities that give you energy to do good work with as much importance as the work itself, and the work will take care of itself.
And I think
Pat, any recommendations?
I think it's called Radical Digital, the summary, which is really, really fits very well into that remote working environment. Super good book.
We got one recommendation as well from Lauren, our social media manager, Eat That Frog. So any further reading after the session, that's 3 recommended summaries. But our allotted time for today is up. So I would like to say thank you, Pat and Sarah, for your time for this discussion. You can find the white paper that we've been talking about on our journal and also on our Vimeo page, where you can also then see all the details about upcoming get-togethers over the next few days. Please do have a look at the white paper. There's a lot of great information, not only for employers, employees, for those who have experience with remote working, and for those who might be a bit newer to the whole concept. So I really hope you enjoyed today's session, and I hope to see you again for more get-togethers. All the details, as I said, are available on the journal, on our Vimeo page. So nothing left to do apart from to say thank you again. Have a great day wherever you are in the world, whatever time zone you're in, and stay safe and healthy. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Extraordinary challenges require extraordinary responses from thought leaders, company executives, and employees. As the coronavirus pandemic unfolds and businesses scramble to adapt to escalating containment efforts, getAbstract is here to help organizations navigate this crisis wisely and professionally. For over 20 years, we've been committed to providing relevant knowledge from reliable sources to help people make better decisions in their personal and professional lives. In line with our mission to empower decision makers with relevant knowledge from trusted sources, we are proud to offer businesses free access to our full library until May 18. Embark on a no-strings-attached knowledge journey with getAbstract. Sign up today.